You savagely beat your child to the edge of death.
She returned upstairs and shot him again as he was crawling.
Morrison was pregnant at the time she was killed.
Ms. Foster, is that your verdict?
The sentence goes into effect today.
When these women receive life sentences, their reactions are intense and raw. Facing a future behind bars, some break down in shock, others stay stone-faced. The reality of never leaving prison hits hard, showing a range of emotional responses that are deeply human.
Sandra Lane deserves the maximum penalty allowed. Please do not show mercy on her.
The mother of Jonathan Hoffman got her wish. Sandra Lane will spend at least 20 years in prison for killing her grandson.
Let's start with our most shocking case. It is the story of Sandra Lane. In 2012, the 75-year-old grandmother from Michigan was convicted of killing her 17-year-old grandson, Jonathan Hoffman. Jonathan had been living with Sandra while his parents were out of town. According to Sandra, she was overwhelmed by his behavior, which included drug use and outbursts. Things escalated on May 18, 2012, when their argument turned deadly.
It was an emotional day in the court. Sandra Lane looking shocked by the very real possibility that she will die in prison. Her own daughter refusing to even call her mother.
Jonathan called 911 from inside the house, saying his grandmother had shot him. He was shot multiple times, once in the chest and several more times while trying to escape. Sandra claimed she acted in self-defense because she felt threatened, but the evidence showed otherwise.
I know what I've done. I can't take it back.
Sandra Lane pleading to the judge, the 75-year-old West Bloomfield woman who claimed it was self-defense when she shot her teenage grandson 6 times, had hoped for a sentence of 3 years in prison for second-degree murder. But Jonathan's mother, Sandra Lane's own daughter, made it clear she wanted the judge to lock her up for the max.
Sandra Lane is pure evil, and if given the opportunity, would surely kill again. She has no remorse or conscience. Her only concerns are for herself.
During the trial, the prosecutor, Paul Walton, argued that Sandra acted out of frustration and rage, not fear. He presented the 911 call, where Jonathan could be heard pleading for help as necessary evidence. Sandra's defense attorney, Jerome Sabata, tried to portray her as a scared older woman, overwhelmed by her grandson's behavior.
You told him that you were fearful of the friends, right? And you had told him that you were fearful to the point that you wanted the jewelry to be hidden, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And you're bringing a gun into your house, yes?
Yes.
A gun is a dangerous weapon, yes?
Yes.
A gun can cause great bodily harm, yes?
Yes.
A gun can kill, yes? So of course you tell your husband, I bought a gun, yes?
Yeah.
You tell your husband, I have a gun in the house, yes?
Judge Denise Langford Morris presided over the case. She listened to both sides, but the jury didn't believe Sandra's self-defense claim. They convicted her of second-degree murder in March 2013. Sandra Lane was sentenced to 20 to 40 years in prison.
They say she shot Jonathan, went to the basement, perhaps to reload, and instead of calling 911 or running outside for help, she returned upstairs and shot him again as he was crawling.
She hunted down Jonathan Hoffman because he wouldn't listen.
Self-defense is simple. A person has an honest and reasonable fear that they're going to be hurt.
Sandra tearfully maintained that she had never meant to hurt Jonathan, but had been pushed to her limits. Still, the court saw her actions as excessive and unjustified, leading to her lengthy prison sentence. Here is the wrap-up of this case.
21-year-old Jessie Nicole Morrison and her unborn child. Morrison was found dead on the side of a Greene County road back in August of last year. Greene County Sheriff Pat Hankins says Morrison was pregnant at the time she was killed.
Time to get with number 2. Vonda Starr Smith faced severe charges in a tragic case. In August 2016, Smith was accused of killing 21-year-old Jessie Nicole Morrison, who was pregnant at the time. Morrison's body was discovered on the side of a road in Greene County, Tennessee, leading to an investigation that would reveal shocking details.
Entering the courtroom with a smile on her face, Vonda Smith greeted her attorney and waited for her sentencing in the 2016 murder of Jessie Morrison, who was pregnant at the time of her death.
All rise.
Judge John F. Duggar Jr. listened to both the mitigating and enhancement factors from Smith's attorney Gene Scott and the state. Scott asked the judge for the minimum sentence of 15 years in the second-degree murder charge, arguing Smith has a small criminal record, being convicted of writing worthless checks in 1993, and that she worked at the same job for 28 years.
Authorities reported that Morrison had suffered harsh force trauma, and her unborn child also died as a result of the attack. Vonda Smith was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, one for Morrison and one for her unborn child. The Greene County Sheriff, Pat Hankins, stated that Smith was the grandmother of one of Morrison's 2 living children, adding a complex layer to the case.
Judge Duggar took several factors into account when sentencing Smith, who had tears running down her face during witness testimony. The judge says the victim, being the fetus, was vulnerable because of age, and that a deadly weapon was used during the murder because Morrison died of blunt force trauma.
Severe lacerations to her skull and fracture in the top of her skull.
He also says Smith violated Morrison's trust, saying she got into Smith's car not long before the murder.
She trusted being with you as opposed to being with a stranger. And bad things happened. This murder happened after that.
Judge Duggar sentenced Smith to life in prison for first-degree murder and gave her the maximum sentence for second-degree murder.
You will have an effective sentence of life imprisonment.
After the sentencing, Tammy Morrison, Jessie's mother, took the stand.
The trial took place in Greene County Circuit Court, presided over by Judge John F. Duggar Jr. During the proceedings, the prosecution presented evidence that included witness testimonies and forensic details about how Morrison died. They argued that Smith had imposed severe injuries on Morrison and that she had violated Morrison's trust by being close to her before the attack. Smith's defense attorney, Gene Scott, argued for a lighter sentence, highlighting Smith's minimal criminal record and her long-term employment history. He requested a minimum sentence of 15 years for the second-degree murder charge. However, the prosecution maintained that the crime was premeditated and deserved a harsh punishment.
She is very relieved that the charges has finally come down and that his arrest has been made, and hoping that in the future that justice will be done.
On May 25, 2021, after review, the jury found Vonda Smith guilty of first-degree murder and second-degree murder. Judge Duggar sentenced her to life in prison for the first-degree murder charge and 25 years for the second-degree charge, with both sentences running concurrently. That's the complete picture of this case.
Count 1 of this verdict reads, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder as included in count 1. Signed by the foreperson of the jury. Mr. Murphy, is that your verdict? Mr. Aldridge, is that your verdict? Ms. Foster, is that your verdict?
Yes.
It's time for case number 3. In 2017, Shelby Isaac, then just 19 years old, was convicted of first-degree murder for a crime that shocked the Memphis community. Isaac's crime was driven by greed and jealousy. She wanted a new hairstyle and was desperate to get the money for it. On January 22, 2016, Isaac arranged to meet with Edwina Thomas, a 33-year-old woman 8 months pregnant, to buy bundles of hair extensions. However, Isaac had no intention of paying. Instead, she planned to rob Thomas. The meeting took place in broad daylight, in the parking lot of an apartment complex. Isaac brought a gun, and when the situation escalated, she shot Edwina Thomas and her boyfriend, Eddie E.J. Tate Jr., who was there with her. The shooting was fatal for both Thomas and Tate. Tragically, Thomas's unborn child also died as a result of the shooting.
The law says this has to be read into the record. I just can't give you a copy of it. Let the attorneys start their closing arguments and refer to the pages. I'm not sure exactly why that has to be read into the record. I guess so that they're sure that everyone has heard it at least once. Okay. I guess we might go back to a time when people really weren't very good at reading. I don't know. But anyway, so it has to be read into the record. It takes about 35 to 40 minutes to read it into the record. So I may take a water break every now and then to see if my voice will hang up and it'll hold up.
The brutality of the crime was shocking, but what made it even more disturbing was Isaac's behavior during her trial. She showed little emotion, and when she was ultimately found guilty of the murders, she broke down not because of remorse, but because of the reality of her situation sinking in. She cried uncontrollably, but it was clear that the tears were for herself, not for the lives she had taken. With this case came to an end.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder.
Guilty! The woman who shot her boyfriend because he was about to ditch her for a Miss USA contestant sobs as she is convicted of murder. And there were audible gasps in court as the jury decided Shayna Huber's sentence today.
We, the jury, fix the defendant, Shayna Huber's punishment for the offense of murder at life imprisonment.
As the judge polled the jury,
Is this your verdict?
yes. Yes, sir. Huber's turned to make eye contact with her family. Shayna Huber shot her 29-year-old boyfriend Ryan Poston 6 times. Prosecutors said she was in a jealous rage because he was pursuing a relationship with Miss Ohio, who testified for the prosecution.
How did he strike you?
Funny and smart.
This case is about a supermodel, Shayna Hubers, whose case shocked Kentucky. In 2012, Shayna, a 21-year-old woman, shot and killed her ex-boyfriend Ryan Poston 6 times in what prosecutors described as a jealous rage. Ryan, a 29-year-old lawyer, had been planning to date Miss Ohio, a Miss USA contestant. Shayna couldn't handle the breakup and his new relationship, leading to the deadly conflict.
It was late, and he was seeking refuge from the woman, the stalker, who in the very near future would take his life. Ryan abandoned his own home to escape her twisted concept of love. Even in the safety of my home, she stalked him relentlessly through the night with a barrage of text messages. The following morning, I did as I had done thousands of times in my son's life. I went into his bedroom to check on him. Although 29 years of age, a grown, responsible man, he was and always would be my child. I laid down next to him, put my head next to his on his pillow, draped my arm over his body, kissed him on his cheek, and said, "I love you, Ryan." Without moving, without opening his eyes, my child mumbled back to me, "I love you, Dad."
On October 12, 2012, Shayna went to Ryan's apartment. They argued, and she shot him 6 times. After the